All righty. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Cornversations Commodity Innovation, Corn and Soybean Beyond the Field, where we're going to talk a little bit about the innovation and some of the headwinds that are facing corn and soybeans today, but also the opportunities. So I think it's really interesting when you step in a grocery store, it's about 80% that I've heard of the products in the grocery store are made with corn in some way, shape, or form. I think that's pretty powerful. Don't you, John?
That's about right. Yes, and you think about it, corn is used in so many ways. So it's not only in the food, but it's often used to make the packaging and also its inputs and so many other things. So corn refineries, which buy about 17% of the American corn crop last year, they're making coatings for all the paper so that you can write on the paper. So it's far flung.
Who would have thought? My paper that I have my notes on today is corn.
You thought it was wood. It's wood and corn, just
Wait,
like the.
who are you, John? Did you say who you are? What
John,
do you
why
do?
don't you introduce yourself today?
I'm John Bodie. I'm president and CEO of the Corn Refiners Association, and we like to say that corn refiners thrive in the U.S. because it's an industry of chemical engineering, and no one in the world produces carbohydrates as efficiently as the American corn farmer, and that's the basic building block.
All right. Lena, why don't you introduce yourself and your role with Indiana Corn and Soybean Alliance?
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Kayla, for inviting me to speak here today. This is actually, sadly, my first Becknology Day. Usually this overlaps with another conference, but I'm glad it did not happen this time. My name's Elena Jetty. I'm the Market Development Biofuels Director for Indiana Corn, Marketing Council, Indiana Soybean Alliance. Our organization is a not-for-profit representing over 25,000 corn and soybean farmers across the state of Indiana. We are research, promotion, marketing arm for all corn and soybean farmers. And what does that mean? So my department is market development. We call it moving the pile. So once products have been commercialized, it's our job to go find those buyers, build those relationships, keep the existing relationships. We also have our value creation and sustainability department. And actually Ben Forsyth, our director, is here today too. And his project manager, Madeline Lilly. So they're going to be the ones that are going to be the idea generation, that innovation, new technology, new uses to find for corn and soybean oil. Once that takes, yes, sometime, then it will move into the market development. And then lastly, we have the producer engagement side, which is all the farmers, marketing, communication, more that on farm, in the field, what are they doing out there in the state of Indiana, and then promoting that with our organization. So market development, real quick, I run our biofuels department, which includes ethanol. Hi, Josh. Renewable diesel, sustainable aviation fuel. What did I miss? Ethanol, biodiesel, renewable diesel, sustainable aviation fuel. And then we also have different product lines like high oleic soybean cooking oil for a lot of our concession stand pieces, which we'll get into in the conversation. So everything that is outwardly pushing use and convenience store, the fuel retailers, like I mentioned, sports venues. I work with the automakers up in Detroit to make sure we have the engines that take the higher blends of ethanol, or the heavy duty trucks. The convenience stores, they're going to use that blend to put into those trucks. And then ultimately the ethanol plants and the biodiesel plants and renewable diesel plants to be able to produce that fuel made, which at the end of the day, my clients, corn and soybean farmers who grow the crop, to then have all that magic come to fruition. So a lot of moving parts in market development.
Jim, round us out.
Yes, thank you. I'm Jim Douglas from Shelbyville, Indiana, corn, soybean, and hog farmer, and been on the Indiana Soybean Year Board 9 years, and now on the United Soybean Board 4 years. And the beauty of this is learning, Helena here has opened the gate as far as exposing us to all the factions of what she was talking about, of the new uses of corn, soybeans, and so forth. And then our CEO, which John, you met yesterday, came out of the corn industry, Tate and Lyle, and she can tell you everything there is about a kernel of corn, and it's always amazing. And then you firsthand about seeing the uses, and Alina went through a lot of that then and so forth. So it's a pleasure to be here and share with you this.
Well, I'm excited to jump right into this. We've heard a lot about some of the healthier products. So, what's beneficial for growers, what's beneficial for consumers, what's beneficial for the environment. We've talked a little bit about how much of our products that we use day in, day out, the paper, the ink, that has corn or soybeans made with it. Let's touch on the healthy aspects and some of the innovation that's going into that. John, do you want to start us off a little bit?
Yes. Well, first of all, there is so much growth in research, and we're learning more and more about nutritional needs, and that's a real growth area. People assume that we already know everything we need to know, and that's not the case. I think the science is very clear about the health of our products, and that's good. But what's also building is consumer confidence in them. The challenge we face is there are these ongoing urban legends that are simply contrary to the science. And that may be urban legends about seed oils or urban legends about high fructose corn syrup, which is nutritionally equivalent to sugar. And that is our challenge. And so just staying on the science, we've got a great story to tell, and consumer awareness of that is growing, but we have our ongoing challenges with some of the sensationalism in social media.
There's been a little conversation between you and I, Alana, about some seed oils and some partners that you guys work with. Talk with us a little bit about what those partnerships look like, because they're really neat, and you wouldn't know it if we didn't talk about it.
Yes. So I think a theme for today's panel will definitely be making sure you have the science and the facts. That's very important. We're in a world where a lot of people just read the headlines for things, and they think whatever I read, that must be the truth. And so our organization really wants to make sure that we're supporting organizations like John, talking through some of these headlines and really getting to the facts. So to segue into that, what Kayla's mentioning is our high oleic soybean cooking oil. And really, this is just so first, we've got over 850,000 acres in Indiana. We're the biggest state that's producing this type of soybean. And so ultimately, it's a heart-healthy, longer shelf life cooking oil for a lot of fried foods. So in a previous role of running restaurants, yes, that's what I also have done. I remember having to change the cooking oil, the vegetable oil, all the time. I mean, you cook anything. Anyone who's been a chef or a cook knows that certain products, chicken tenders, wings, are going to take up a lot of oil, and they're going to have, it starts to get a rancid taste to it that, it's almost like that carbony taste that you're like, this doesn't taste so fresh anymore. So with the high oleic soybean cooking oil, it really retains that flavor profile that really, keeps that longer shelf life. So they're not having to change the oil out as frequently. So not only are the chefs in the food and beverage departments, and I'll get to who those are, not having to have that extra changeover, they're actually saving money in their purchasing of this type of oil. So if anyone does need to know where to get this, we work with all the food suppliers here in Indiana, U.S. Foods, Aramark, Sodexo Live, Levy Restaurants in particular, who runs the Gamebridge Fieldhouse, is one of our partners. So if you're a Pacer fan or Fever fan and you've gone to Gamebridge in the last 3 years, you have and eaten any French fries or chicken tenders, you're having the oil-based product that our organization is supporting in that venue. They're moving hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pounds a year of the soybean cooking oil. And so that actually in 2020 launched right then around that time. We all don't want to talk about. And so we've kept that partnership, and then we use that as a template to then duplicate that over at Lucas Oil, where the Colts play. So if you went there for a NFL football game, or maybe you saw Taylor Swift, last year, we definitely were moving gallons of the soybean cooking oil. And then we also work with Victory Field, our Indianapolis Indians partner for baseball. We have the new Fisher Event Center up in Fishers that has the Indy Fuel hockey team that also does the new Pro Ignite volleyball, and then also has the Fisher Freight minor football team. And then we have Purdue University. We're working with IU down in Bloomington. And so Rich Charles, if you're familiar with that catering, I'm working with Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Aramark is their supplier. And so I say all this very casual, but it took a lot of energy and time. I will say that firsthand to have these conversations. So when you're talking to a food and beverage department and their director, the last thing they want to do is have you change something that they've been doing forever because of a sponsorship. So this has been very multifolded. And this is for any business, I would say, knowing who the chef is, who the food and beverage director, and then who the sponsorship person is. We've had to do multiple testings with our product to make sure the chef is comfortable with the product. It's not going to impact their pricing. And then make sure the sponsorship is something that our organization can afford. And knowing that really that sustainability story and supporting local agriculture in this market is really important. And they want to tell that story. And I think that is a foundation that other products can then be built upon that into that same relationship. And that's what Indiana Corn and Soy is very good at doing across our different departments.
So a lot of seeing is believing, just like old Jolly St. Nick for us. Let's think about innovation, Jim. For our growers here, when we think about corn and soy, to be able to do what we're doing, what are some challenges or opportunities that are facing our farmers today to be able to do what we're talking about?
Yes, to add on our checkoff program also supports the Soybean Nutrition Institute to help promote positive research and display that. And so that's an organization that we're active in and support that, the same thing as what you're talking about. Then on the Ohio Lake soybeans, and this is a story that can come home to the Indiana farmers, Bunge and ADM at Frankfurt have been two vendors that's processed Ohio Lake, and Indiana has been a big benefactor from that. So as our checkoff assessment in Indiana is about $12 million a year, but Indiana farmers have collected millions of dollars of premiums through the Ohio Lake program. And so, one of the key factors is you have to have a processor. And so Indiana's been lucky to have two processors here and so forth. So that program alone has returned a lot of money to the checkoff system and the Indiana farmers directly. That other innovations, we can talk about some new uses. The soybean oil in the tires that are out here. There's certain models, certain product lines that have tires that have soybean oil instead of petroleum. We have the concrete sealant that's called Pore Shield, and that's being used on a lot of the state bridges, interstate, and other new uses of soybean oil. One of the new things you'll see a lot of advertisement right now is the firefighting foam, and that's taking the place of what they call PFAB, which is a toxic chemical in the foam now. So you'll see a lot of advertisement on the foam that's made out of the soy products and so forth.
John, how about for you guys? What innovation is upcoming or needed?
Kayla, the only thing I would ever disagree with Jim about is when he says Indiana's lucky. I think Indiana's good. You work hard to make these opportunities and really deserve a lot of credit. I think innovation is really the driver for us. It's the same whether you're a corn refiner or a corn producer or a soy producer. It's all about markets. And market opportunities that's fundamental for us. And we see innovation as key to that. And the great growth opportunity in corn refining is biomanufacturing. And biomanufacturing is increased innovation in precision fermentation. and that's opening doors for growing the bioeconomy. Bioindustrials, Jim was talking about a number of them, are the tremendous growth opportunity for our industry writ large. Helena's done such a great job in promoting biofuels. I think of that as the point on the spear of the ag bioeconomy. But the ag bioeconomy can grow vastly beyond biofuels. It's just that nothing will be on the horizon is as big as a single product as ethanol, but there will be thousands of these products, whether it's used in asphalt or treatings on paper or whatever. All of those opportunities, that is where a real growth area. I would say that the innovations just keep coming. It's mind blowing, and one example is there is a corn-based drop-in that fits with the recycling of PET. So PET is like the water bottles. Okay, and they can be recycled. It drops in, you can still recycle it, but it makes those bottles lighter, so they don't weigh as much, and less gas permeable. So they can be used for things like beer or soft drinks without adversely affecting shelf life. So the innovations keep coming. What we need is to keep building on that.
If I could add on to John. So yes, this is where I see a lot of these partnerships in Indiana where the sports bring people together, just like food and restaurants and spirits, right? However you want to celebrate. These are those common things that bring this emotional connection together and a foundation. So to John's point too, and I guess I didn't bring together the Andretti Global Partnership that we have using the biofuels piece of it as the entry point to get our relationship going. They use biodiesel and renewable diesel in their transporters and their heavy duty fleets. But we've introduced the high oleic soybean cooking oil to their lead chef that feeds all their drivers, all their workers, their teams when they travel all over the country. And we recently had their executive chef do a video of that, which is on LinkedIn, but it talks about everything, the benefits I shared earlier about the cooking oil, but then also just saying, I didn't know about the other products for biofuels, and the chef not really realizing all of the commodities that are working together to partner with, an IndyCar team. The vision of that would be to have all IndyCar teams now use the oil, now use the biofuels. The partnership with something that John made me remember is we actually have a new partnership with PepsiCo using biodiesel in their fleets, working with ADM on that processing piece. And then Pilot Flying J is their fuel retailer who is going to use a B99 blend to use the Optimus technology that powers this at the vehicle. They have the place to fuel it up, and they've got the source of getting the fuel from the retailer. So that's something to work with. And then I met with PepsiCo the other day, and they were saying, there's a lot of corn, obviously, that goes into the Frito-Lay plant that's right up north by Frankfurt. Yep. And so then the lady was telling me, the plastics part, they're looking to repackage. She said it takes about a year, but to do what John's saying with the corn plastics. So it's such a cool story for the packaging, the product of the chip, and then it's getting fried in the high oleic soybean cooking oil, and now they're also using it for their fleets with the fuel. So I think if we set that we can attract a lot more vendors that we're going to want to partner with us.
I think so. What's also exciting about this is we've been talking about the tremendous new innovation and capabilities of agriculture-based products, but there's also demand side. So what we've seen over the last 5 years is a 20% increase in consumer awareness of these products, and also that consumer perception of farmers and agriculture has been improved by their recognition that agriculture is producing this for them.
What do you think has helped tell that story? How do we get more of that, John? Because, Jim and I have talked about it a little bit. Like, how do we do more of that?
Well, I don't want to jump ahead of you, Jim, but I think we need to keep the drumbeat going. I think in agriculture, we don't do enough to toot our own horn. I think we have a culture of you don't brag about it, you just do it. But often, there's so little understanding of agriculture in our more urban settings. As our population shifts away from agriculture, we need to tell our story. So they better understand the incredible innovation in agriculture. This is a great example of what's happening, talked about today. And I think what Jim's doing is brilliant in that regard, telling our story and also telling the story about the environmental progress in agriculture, because as we've seen with some of the MAHA leaders, they're well-intentioned, but they don't understand agriculture very well. So we need to tell our story better.
Yeah.
The engineers that design our products, they are well aware of the biodegradability of corn oil and soybean oil. It's the time period it takes to incorporate that into their product line. But I attended the American Coatings Convention here a year or so ago, and everybody that stopped at our booth, that's all they were talking about was, trying to incorporate that in their line, taking out a petroleum or a synthetic chemical and replacing that with a biodegradable, safe product like soybean oil or corn oil. And so that the industry knows, but it takes a while for that wheel to change things, but it will change, and it's changing in front of our eyes, and all the products that we're using, like Helena mentioned there up at Frankfurt.
I would add just that hitting it on the front for the producer to talk about it in the communities is very important, and controlling the narrative up front with the science and the facts, and having third-party credible people like Beck's organizations, corn refiners, our organization, but then having all the sports venues I mentioned, you now have created other way to talk about what you're talking about without it coming from me. And of course you're going to talk about that, Elena, because that's your job and that's what you do. And so no, it's trying to get those tools and resources and talking points to other people who are not in the space to feel comfortable with talking about this. And that's what we are doing with our corn and soybean board, so that they feel confident when they go out to talk about this. Because if you don't control the narrative, then someone else will create that for you. And the last thing we want, I'm obviously very confident to talk about our programs, but we're not just going to watch football games and basketball games and, Indy 500 and all these things. We have products being used in these facilities that are high volume, hundreds of thousands of consumers and fans. That has to be a part of that conversation. You can bring people together, but if you don't have a product, then you get those challenging questions like, what are you spending my money on? And then it's like, oh, well, did you know Lucas Oil does 200,000 pounds of soybean oil orders every 2 weeks? That divided by 35, there's 35 pounds in one jib. You start doing the math, and then to Jim's point, you're getting over millions of dollars of premiums. Money talks on different levels. And so if the program's working, we're going to keep doing it until someone can say that that's not successful anymore. Then we'll keep the partnerships growing.
John, I want to jump back a step for a moment. You mentioned something that I don't think a lot of people realize how impactful it can be for our corn and soybean farmers. You mentioned the word MAHA. Yes. Touch on that a little bit and those challenges and hurdles that we're looking at.
Well, Secretary of HHS Kennedy launched the Make America Healthy Again movement, and of course, there's a long story there, but basically, it has fantastic goals. It's about a better focus on addressing chronic disease and how so much of that is obesity related, and having better preventive care. But some of the enthusiasm for that is being carried by social media influencers who are invested in urban legends instead of science-based approaches. And so some of the objectives to achieve those goals simply haven't made sense. And so it gets back to the point we've all been talking about of having science and risk-based policies, and that's important. So an example that I like to give is they've talked at times about replacing high fructose corn syrup with sugar. Well, that simply puts thousands of Americans out of work. It depresses farm prices. It increases our trade deficit and has zero benefit for public health. So it's good to check the facts before you get on social media, and we're helping more of those people do that.
Let's switch gears and think internationally. What are those challenges that are facing corn, soybean innovation, new uses for us internationally right now?
Kayla, if you're going to give me a minute here, there's one industry we haven't talked about, and that's the livestock industry. And so the ethanol industry takes about a third of the U.S. corn crop. The animal industry takes not the other 2/3, but close to it. And so the importance of a vibrant, healthy animal industry in the United States is utmost critical here. And so we're talking about, hogs, chickens, and
Fish?
turkeys. Yes. And anyway, there's a certain amount of that product that's exported. So we're exporting 35% of our hogs. The chicken number, I'm not sure, but we're exporting a lot of poultry. And those products are using United States labor to package, process, and then ship those products. So there's a lot of value added to that. But again, we don't want to lose sight that the biggest customer on corn and soy is the livestock industry.
So adding on to the global scope, so part of market development is, yes, and also including, thank you, Jim, livestock, and then exports and trade. So obviously we can do the best programs here that we want, and sometimes those outside factors like tariffs can impact what that trade looks like. This isn't new information to anyone here in this area. But I do think that there's a lot of positive movement where we are making truly America first. Really need to focus on our corn and soybean farmers and any farmers really here in the U.S. and making sure that our administration doesn't create policies to restrict the domestic use of corn in all forms and soybean in all forms. So that's where that MAHA and science base has to really come into play. Especially when we're trying to do a lot of more domestic feedstocks here in North America. And to Jim's point, I mean, as we get higher demands for the biofuel side, like renewable diesel and ethanol, we're coming up this year to have our highest exports ever for the U.S., over 2 billion gallons of ethanol to be exported. And guess where the number one country goes for our ethanol export? Canada. So guess what? Canada has a Made in Canada program going on right now. So sometimes the things that the U.S. does are really awesome. Go America. But we have to make sure we're not making some partners of our friendlies get mad, because over 600 million gallons goes to Canada every year. So when I'm doing my job and going around the world and touting U.S. products, I want U.S. products to continue to be bought, and the livestock as well. The meats, we are very fortunate in this country to have a very great selection of very different types of poultry and meats and things like that. And so we just have to kind of keep a pulse on that. Now, things I'm happy about, because in the ethanol world, Brazil is our biggest competitor when it comes to ethanol, sugarcane ethanol. So I try to keep a pulse on that, and I'm glad we're getting matched with some tariffs on that, because for a long time, Brazil tariffed us 18%, and we had a 0 on Brazil. That's not cool. I mean, So when you got your biggest competitor, we want to make sure that we've got American farmers first in all the products. And then I do think the administration is doing a good job with trying to find a balance, but be respected, be a leader, and lead with strength. I mean, and that's what our country really is. So, and farming, even though it's, I guess the concern, and I know you got other questions, Kayla, would be some of the succession planning, right? You know this better than anybody from other roles, is a concern because you got to have children. You've got to have your family that are going to continue this. We feed the world, and I want to make sure that we continue to do so. And our young ones need to find value in this industry so that they stay in it and they do the family farm work. And so I would say that's no new information again to anyone here, but finding other programs, finding cool avenues like with the corn refiners to help educate the Maha pieces to be healthy in the United States, but use domestic products. I mean, it's going to be a real challenge, but we need to stay strong and not, let other countries take our.
Kayla, I'd just like to say the points they've made are so on target. It's incredible. And I'd just add, when we talk about livestock, think about dairy too. Dairy went from nowhere in exports to now being an important part of the export mix. And I think what we need to focus on is opening markets. And what's happening now with the reciprocal tariffs, trying to reset trade relations, is very important and is promising. But it's not a sure thing that it's going to turn things around. The U.S. has not signed a new market opening trade agreement since 2007. The rest of the world, we've been standing still. The rest of the world is racing ahead. So this is a competitive environment. If we're standing still, we're moving back in line because everybody else is moving forward. Helena pointed out the great competitive pressures from Brazil. It's their infrastructure has gotten so much better. They're doing a lot of things as well as opening trade agreements that give them significant opportunities. And finally, I would say we've got to recognize China is an important factor. I think having ongoing trade relations with China is very important. They ought to be a good market for us. But we also need to recognize that state-controlled economy is not always fair in the way they operate. Biomanufacturing has been a strategic objective of China since 2005. They are one of 32 nations that consider biomanufacturing a national strategic objective. And when they do it, they really invest in dig deep. China's private sector is investing 40% more than the U.S. in biomanufacturing capability. Why is that important for corn and soybean farmers? It's important because if they are building the biomanufacturing capability, that is a market that is suddenly hot for Brazil to compete for. China's expanding production, especially in corn, will be competitive with it. So, but if the biomanufacturing is here, the U.S. corn and bean farmers have a lock on that market.
So with all this being said, what's your call to action? Is it more collaboration? Is it more education? What is that call to action that you want us all to know about from growers, from the organizations that you work with and represent, from this wonderful industry? What's that call to action?
Well, I would have two calls to action.
Now that's overachieving, John.
Okay, we must keep up the educational effort, and I so appreciate what's happening with the checkoff programs in that regard. And outside of checkoff, we need Congress to act on the remainder of the Farm Bill because the bioeconomy provisions of the Farm Bill were not addressed in what's been done so far. And having a Farm Bill that is 5, 6, 7 years old, things are happening so rapidly in this international competitive market. We can't afford to fall farther behind. Right now, the science is being developed here at institutions like Purdue on developing the bioeconomy, but it's being commercialized in China or elsewhere in Asia because we don't have the infrastructure for the commercial development. And that needs to happen. And there are bipartisan bills with Indiana congressional leaders taking the lead on pushing those that would address that problem. So support growth of the bioeconomy the way bipartisan efforts in Congress are trying to do it.
Okay, well, I'll do three. So number one, I would say most important would be to get out of your circle. Get out of the sphere that you feel comfortable in and assuming that everybody knows what you do in your world of agriculture. So no secret, I did not grow up on a farm. My parents did not grow up in this country. My mom's from Germany and my dad's from Panama. So coming into this space of agriculture, I've been so blessed to really soak up a lot of information over the last 7 years in this role. But I had other experience that kind of teed me along the way to sort of just keep that innovation and like learning. Don't lose that, and don't assume because you know what you're talking about, everybody else does. So have some grace. And when you're like talking about your equipment and you're in a world, because you put yourself not in the same world you're always in, you want to get out and talk about other things. It's going to be uncomfortable, but if you can talk in a way that others can understand you that are not in the ag space, that goes a long way, especially for newbies like me 7 years ago that did not understand Jim's world, but I was trying to figure out how I could help. There are other people that are wanting to do that. And you're not going to find them if you're just in the same silo all day, every day. So you've got to get out. And the other two, with that said, would be to go to places like go to one of your favorite football games. Go eat the chicken tenders and the French fries in moderation, like everything, because you're then supporting our high oleic soybean cooking oil efforts. And every sign at the stadiums, they have a QR code that will give you the information that I've talked about today, and will bring you back to Indiana Corn and Soy so you can see all the other awesome programs that we're doing. And so, getting out of your comfort zone, eating, enjoying the sports, and then telling people to go and do the same. I mean, I'm trying to come up with an idea how we can sort of track people that go to the venues and can give feedback or give a positive remark. And then in turn, it will help, I think, the stadium's ticket sales go up as well. I don't know how that's going to work. But yeah, that'd be a couple of things that I would say to do. Yeah.
Couple things come to mind. First, you have to realize that 97% of the world's population live outside of the United States. And so, we're a very wealthy economy here. And when you go into the other developing economies, they have none of this. And yet they see us and they see the progress. They want to make progress, and it's coming quickly, but they have a long way to go. And then on top of their mind is food security. And we take food for granted here. But in those economies, they don't. They're not that many years away from starvation and so forth. And so they want to make sure that their food supply is stable. And as they have more money, they like to eat better. And that comes in, our United States, we've developed into a lot of exporting refined products as meats and poultry and so forth. So just not lose sight of the world market is huge. And that's for, when you look at the United States and what we're exporting and whatnot, and we're in competition with other players. And so this current president wants to try to get fair trade going, and that's some of his initiative of all this. And it's a bumpy road, but hopefully we'll get there.
Well, thank you all so much for joining us and talking about where we're going with corn, soy, and that it's not just in that kernel or in that little pod there. So I think now we are ready to go enjoy some pork chops and some ice cream that have all had corn or soy impacted with it today. So thank you all so much.
Thank you,
Thank
Kayla.
you.
Thank you,
Kayla.
Kayla.